Greetings from Cybertron. This is SoundJack here with another episode of SoundJack's Rambles. And today I am here with Matt.
How you doing, man?
Doing well. Doing very well. And you?
Pretty good. Cold. Very cold.
Definitely cold. I will be jealous if there's anyone listening to this that's in a warm climate right now.
When I got home from work, in anticipation of this podcast, I'm recording in my basement. I had to run downstairs, plug in the electric heater, and then let that go the entire few hours between then and the recording. So, and I've got my jacket on, so I should be fine.
Okay. I think I'm good too. My roommate does like it cold in our apartment, so I'm a little chilly. I'm a little chilly, but I'm fine. But we are here to talk about the Titans Return toy line. Specifically, we are here today as the Titans Return toy line has finally ended. Definitely as of 2018 now, since we are now well into Power of the Primes. So we are going to talk today and go over the Titans Return toy line and just kind of review it, talk about what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, kind of what we could have done differently, just our overall review of this toy line per se. But first, before we get into it, let's just go over the basics of the Titans Return toy line. So Matt, can you just give like a brief overview of like what the line was, like the premise, the concept?
Sure. It's part 2 of the Prime Wars trilogy. Came behind Combiner Wars, followed by Power of the Primes. So it's the middle child, and it's got the gimmick for the line is the Headmasters, or as they call Titan Masters in the series, which gives a really good play factor, which is I think why I like this line so much, is because there's such interactivity between the $5 figures you get and the $15 and $20 figures you get and up. But they interact very well and makes you look forward to buying that next size class to have them interact with each other. That's what drew me to the line, that it's just so playable with these figures.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. With that, let's also go over what kind of size classes we had for this line, because this line did introduce a new size class that we hadn't seen before, which was the Titan Master class. That was a $5 price point, and included a Titan Master figure, so it just turned into a head without a body. But since the line was completely, the heads were all completely interactable with other larger figures, they could attach to other bodies. But they came with a Titan Master vehicle of sorts. And certainly for some more of them than others, they were a vehicle of sorts.
Right. Yeah, some approximation of something.
Yeah. As well as those vehicles, they could also combine with to make a weapon form that can be held by all the larger size classes.
Which was a little more hit or miss than the vehicle mode.
Yeah, fair, definitely. But definitely a lot of them had good integrations with their vehicle partners, I guess. Next size class up was the Legends class. That was about $10, right?
Yes. Yeah, $9.99, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. $10 price point. None of them had Titan Master partners come with them. Their heads were definitely way too small for the large blocky heads. However, they were still interactable with Titan Masters with either some level of Titan Master port upon them, or the Titan Master could ride inside or on their vehicle mode.
Yep, with the... it really gave a way a lot of these had the vehicle modes have a cockpit or a driver's seat was. We'll talk about them when we get there, but man, some of them were just surprising how well they worked. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Following that, $15 price point is the Deluxe class, the good old standard. Deluxe size figure, probably what would you say their height is? Like 5 inches about?
I've got one here. I would say 5.5, give or take on the figure. Yep.
Yeah, about 5.5 inches tall. Comes with the Titan Master, a robot that turns into a vehicle, and some amount of weaponry. As well as the weapons that they would come with would also, in some way, shape, or form, make a Titan Master extra gun seat or whatever, or a vehicle or whatever.
I called them all the Titan Master sleds. I wasn't real big on that part of the gimmick, but
Yeah,
yep.
like that. Yeah, I will say I wasn't particularly thrilled about that part, but like it's an option. They were trying. They were certainly trying with that part. Definitely did appreciate. We'll get into more of that later. But next class up, Voyager class, $25, $25 price point. All Voyager figures were, along with the deluxes, also were triple changers, all the way across the board. And also, for the most part, had something to beef out their heads since the head started to get a little small on their bodies.
Yeah, their pop-up collars.
Yeah. Or for Galvatron, it was the pop-up mask.
Mm-hmm. Helmet, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into more about what we think about that later. Leader class was the next class, $45. All leader class figures had robot mode, alternate mode, larger helmets that basically completely encapsulated the Time Master, as well as some form of a base mode that allowed for greater interaction with Time Masters and could also interlink with leader class not leader class figures, the Titan class figures, which were the big boys. We got 2 of them in this toy line, purely because of how the years worked for the Titans Return toy line. Fortress Maximus and Trypticon, which were really massive bases that could interact with all the figures, all the other figures, and could connect with the base modes of the leader class figures.
Yep.
They had different things going on about them, but there's only 2 of them, so I think we may be able to talk about them a little more detail. Then probably we will talk about the others. But that's not entirely all we had. So we did have some exclusives involved. So Matt can go over just a couple of examples of what kind of exclusives we got out of this toy line.
Well, they had they had some remolds, some extensive remolds that they introduced. The Blur got remolded into Brainstorm, and I'm sure there's a few, but just to hit on RC and Brainstorm were remolds. And were 2 fairly popular. And we also had introduced as exclusives, which was baffling to some, was the clones. So we got clone packs as exclusives.
Yes.
And then some retail outlets got full box sets that I'm sure we can talk about a little bit.
Definitely. We're definitely going to have to hit on those because those are a very strange case. Because... also in relation with the Autobot and Decepticon remaining clones not being involved in a huge box set, that was completely expected. And then there were just a couple other convention exclusive stuffs that were very interesting. Some more interesting than others. And the last thing involved with this toy line was the Takara version, which they refer to as Legends, which for the most part were standard Takara Hasbro stuff, but with better paint applications and whatnot, except for a few figures. And Matt, can you explain what that was?
We had a few of the figures, if I remember correctly, a few of the figures actually came with Target Masters and the like, did they not?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Apparently for the first few figures, they came with like the Time Master vehicle, just the vehicle itself, possibly with a paint scheme closer to them. But eventually later on, they just like, we're just going to give these figures brand new molded Target Master partners. That kind of are like, what? Where did these come from? Why are they here? But they looked quite cool.
And hoping they show up mainline somewhere.
Hopefully. I'm waiting. If the Transformers Collectors Club that Hasbro mentioned that they were going to make, that has barely seen any light of day yet, does continue, I do hope they would release like a box set of those figures. That would be my ideal. Or like a couple of box sets of those Target Master partners, because the Target Master partners are still really cool. Regardless. However, neither of us got any of them, so we cannot really speak about how good they are. Just at the very least, we need to recognize that they exist.
Yep. And I know folks that did get them do like them. I mean, I would say most of them said that they were worth the money if you're willing to spend that. As we said before the recording, that me personally, if I could walk into a store and pay half the price, I'm okay with that. I'm not so much a paint junkie that was such a big deal to me. But I could definitely see the draw of some of those.
Yes.
Maybe not all of them, but some of them definitely.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the fact that like Top Spin and Twin Twist got Target Master partners that are like completely whole cloth new.
Yep.
But regardless, let's get talking into more of the line of about the higher points of the line that we liked. So Matt, let's have you start off. Let's get into something about what did you like about this line?
It was the interplayability. I liked that the robots were forced to have working cockpits of a different. I mean, the sizes very specific to the headmasters, and that they were able to incorporate them so many different ways. I mean, you had a wider range of robots collapsing in on themselves, or somehow flipping inside and out to go to lengths to hide this cockpit. And I think for the most part throughout the line, I don't think many of them suffered from the gimmick, which is kind of what I was impressed with, is that they forced them all to have these cockpits or driver seats, and they weren't any worse off for it. Where so many times we see a gimmick be the detriment of a figure, it drags the whole thing down. Where this, I didn't think that was the case on most of them.
Very true. That's a point. I didn't even realize that all the cockpits. I don't know of a figure that I own that I would say the cockpit is a major detriment to the figure. At best, the only figure I can really think of off the top of my head may be Braun, and that just his proportions are a little off.
Right, and Braun, that pretty much just made him into a standard, like, legs flip over, arms pull in transformer.
Just more so, like,
times.
Yeah, just more so. I think just because in his torso, his entire torso is the cockpit. I think they made his torso a bit longer than it should be, and making his legs a little squatter than it should be. But admittedly, for that character, it's fine because he's a big, muscly guy. So if it's like he's a little out of proportion, that's fine. It's just he's got more muscle, I guess.
Yep.
But truly, you are right. There's nothing I could say it's really a detriment in terms of the cockpits. Something I can probably say that it was may have been a detriment to a couple of figures. The Voyager figures is the head. We've gone through this entire Toyline and I still don't even know what to call them.
The pop collar?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good term for it, the pop collar.
Yeah.
Those were just like, I understood the premise behind them.
Yeah.
Because the heads could be a little larger for a Voyager class figure. But with them up, head articulation was completely minimized.
They did make an effort, though. I did mess with a buddy's Sentinel Prime, and at least the collar did rotate to a point. It was still extremely...
It was extremely minor.
Minor, but you could get some emotion out of it, some emoting from the... Very minimal, but at least they tried,
Yeah. No, yeah. And I will say I do like the one on the Sentinel Prime Astro Train mold the most. Purely because last year I did happen to get a G1 Astro Train, and looking at him from the front, he's got those like wheels sticking up the back of his behind his head, and just looks like they just moved that to the front, and that just looks aesthetically pleasing to me.
Right.
But for a lot of the others, they were not necessarily aesthetically pleasing to me. The ones on Alpha Trion, I think fit pretty well, but they only really fit him because they're also colored like the rest of his body and the rest of his face, and you can put another head in there and it's just completely different colors. So it just doesn't mesh well to me. But again, for the most part, they're a fine attempt. They were a fine attempt, not so much as those. Now let's get back into more positive traits of this toy line, because I was going to try to save the negative stuff for later on.
Sure.
Any negatives? Let's talk about the Titan Master interactability, because they did a lot to work with that.
I picked up I picked up Crash Bash and Shuffler out of those. And you have a bunch of slight remolds and some palette swaps and such, some recolorations. But like I said, same deal though. The ones I messed with, I mean, they all work fairly well. Especially at a $5 price point, it's something that you were just easy to go in, grab one or two, and not feel bad about it later, even if they weren't setting the world on fire. Which I kind of think Shuffler did. If you want to talk about a positive, I mean,
oh yes,
Shuffler was pretty cool in all modes and looked cool on the shelf. I mean, just having a little elephant there.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
Shuffler, I think, is if we're going through and making a favorite of each size class, the Shuffler would definitely be my favorite.
Yeah, I second
of those. But certainly, I do very much appreciate having this price point. Just in general, both in terms of just general like marketing, because now prices have increased. The original $5 Scout / Legends class has gone up to $10 where Deluxes used to be. So it's not as easy to get in, but you can still get. But now they got this, you can still get in, and it's still all completely interactable with the rest of the toy line.
Yep, and you could grab a whole one, throw it in your pocket if you wanted to on the move, and just have something that was several different modes, had a vehicle, all in the palm of your hand. Yeah. Which was really nice, especially and you got to think for kids as well. I mean, we're adult collectors, but especially for kids, man. I mean, as a parent, I can much more stomach a $5 toy than my son wanting a $10 or $15 or $20 one every single time.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also It is very nice that not only the Time Master itself was completely interactable and able to not only accommodate being ahead, being inside the larger classes cockpits, even being able to stand on them with the Time Master pegs that not all but most of them have on their bodies somewhere. Mm-hmm. But as well as those vehicles partners also being usable by the larger figures or being placed on like the Titan or the base mode as extra embattlements. That's a really nice. I find that to be a really nice touch.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have this big base, it's nice to have some things that base modes never really made much sense to me when it came to using some of the larger deluxe class figures with it, because it just didn't look right. It never looked right. At least with these guys, the smaller Titan Masters, at least that looks the part.
Yes.
If you remember back when they launched the line, they had the table at, I think it was HasCon or BotCon, the last BotCon.
Yeah.
Where they had the table laid out with just hundreds of headmasters all over the place. That looked cool.
Yes.
So that was a good way to sell them.
Yes. And also very much encouraging people with 3D printing to make their own faces and then just trade the faces out. I know there are a lot of people online that have alternate faces, and then you can just go in the store, grab a whole bunch of them, and then just replace them and have a whole bunch of new head partners.
Yep, I didn't even think about that, but that's Shapeways or wherever you get your 3D stuff from. I'm sure there are tons of them. Do you have any of those?
I've always looked. I just never got any. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because the Prime Masters exist in the Power of the Primes toy line, but they replace the screw with a pin, so it's impossible to remove the back plate to replace it with a face.
I wonder why. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate. I know the main guy I know was Trent Troop. I think he's got over 300 alternate faces. For figures and whatnot, from a wide range of characters, even for different continuities. But these are very playable, and I do see a lot of their advertising for the Time Masters themselves just showcase a massive amount of repeats, and there is definitely an option for just getting a whole bunch of them and just having a crowd filler, I guess would be the case.
Yep.
Would be the term, not like army building or anything, but yeah, the crowd filler would be the case for this, and just having a whole bunch of little dudes running around city modes and being getting the weapons out and getting ready to fire on the approaching invasion army or whatever.
Sure, like you said, with especially off the top of my head, I can think of Perceptor, where Perceptor get a tune accurate face or more so, and comes with a giant sniper rifle, but. I'm guessing on here you could probably find an eye patch Perceptor from the comics.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
There's definitely one of those.
So definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and especially even customizing larger figures into being representative bodies for even these current little guys is also a very interesting very possibility. And I do very much appreciate the gimmick of the cross compatibility. I'm just too much of a color snob, so like a lot of the colors clash. But like, it's also nice that they also establish like, hey, these Time Masters can grant powers to them, so they're kind of like mini cons to an extent. So you can also have that playability of like, oh, now I'm trying to remember someone's power off the top of my head because they. I just want to bring this up because it deserves to bring up. Did you see at like the San Diego Comic Con or HasCon or New York Comic Con where they had the Triptychon Time Master Crunch cereal boxes?
Yes, I did see that.
Though that's just so nerdy and great, and like it had all the powers, like collect them all, and you had to check them off, and they all had the powers on them.
Yep.
And that was just a very neat touch.
I wonder, you have to be able to print that somewhere. I'm sure someone's got a PDF.
There's a PDF of it. I did hope to get a real one to be like actually like on the proper cardboard to like fold it into a cereal box.
Sure.
But there may be a way. There's probably a way to do that. I just haven't figured it out yet. But back to the Time Masters. Yeah, they were all very nice, especially for what they were for $5. Not all of them were as great as others, certainly. We have certainly both praised Shuffler, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, I don't know who's the least favorite. I never ended up getting any of the Wave 2 figures, purely because they just kind of missed being in the stores somehow.
And we get that. There's a lot of that with this whole series of whole waves and just being just hard to get.
Yeah, I'm certain we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But definitely out of the ones I have, I'd say Nightbeat might be the weakest one to me.
Let's see, I can't remember which one. Oh, okay, yeah, Nightbeat.
Yeah, he was the blue yellow faced guy.
Yep. The jet and the tank, the drill.
Yeah, the drill. Again, the jet mode just looks so dumb.
But yeah, as I had Crash Bash and Shuffler, and I liked them both. I mean,
yeah, Crash Bash was cool. And the thing to me about this, surprisingly, was I think I liked a lot more of the ones with the beast forms rather than the vehicle forms.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. That was just really. I don't know why. It felt like it worked for a lot of them more than the vehicle ones that I've had.
Well, and it also lent itself to a little bit more playability. My original display with them was Crash Bash specifically turns into almost like a Robo Vulture kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had him perched on Mindwipe's arm, and that looked really cool.
Ooh.
And the beast modes especially worked. The vehicles are just vehicles. They're boxes with some aspect of a vehicle plugged on either the front, back, or sides.
Yes.
So the beast took a little more imagining, and I think did end up coming off better for it.
Yeah, definitely. And Ramhorn on that line was also pretty good. I mean, he was not a Shuffler retool, but I mean, he was still very, very nice. But let's get into talking about something a bit larger. Matt, what's another thing you appreciated about this toy line?
I'll tell you what. This is a continuation from the Combiner Wars line, but the extensive retooling that they weren't afraid to do before, they definitely weren't afraid to do again. Even figures that at first glance, off the top of my head, if we're getting in just to jump to deluxes for a second, because that's where I have most of my knowledge base. You had like I'm trying to think, like even just as simple as a Blur to a Brainstorm, where you could tell offhand that they were the same, but looking at them, I mean, they did such a good job. Also, Highbrow and
Scourge,
Scourge and Windblade, all coming from the same mold. But you wouldn't be able to tell that just off, looking at pictures, just off the cuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think this is the heaviest extent of retooling we've ever really seen from Hasbro before. And it really helped, and to an extent, it helps them both get really different characters while saving money on using the same molds.
Right, and who would ever think? I mean, exactly. We're getting and I think that's maybe something else too. Is that the characters that they dip deep into? You know, of course we're going to get a Starscream, of course Bumblebee and Optimus, yada yada yada. But I mean, a Misfire.
Yeah,
you know,
and Misfire is a retool with his former Decepticon Target Master buddies, Slug Slinger and Trigger Happy.
Yep.
And we would not have gotten all of them if they weren't from something else, because they're so obscure and different that they'd either have to be retool something. In the past, we would have assumed they would have had to been retool or redeco of something that's not really them, or we wouldn't have gotten them at all.
Right, shoehorned into something that didn't fit. Where these were just, I mean, they looked right. They matched their G1 counterparts with deco and color scheme, and you know, there's some liberties taken here or there, but so what? I mean, there hasn't been a new Misfire figure in 30 years, so probably less than that. But you know,
no, I think it's been 30 years. I think the original Target Masters came out in ’87.
Yeah, or maybe his name was used elsewhere, but still, I mean, to have that character represented.
I actually don't think Misfire is one of the is a character that's gotten used. I know Slug Slinger was used during Energon, but I think that might be about it.
Okay.
But regardless, and as well, it's also nice is that there were not a whole lot of straight redecos throughout this toy line. There were a handful, certainly, but not a whole lot, especially in the deluxes. Like, it was mainly Breakaway, Croc, and Quake.
And Quake even was a special case because I didn't buy Quake, but I saw him in the stores. And man, they went to town on the paint on that thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, Quake was breathtaking to see in hand. So, while that is a straight redeco, like you said, I think that's something special. I don't know. None of the other ones ever jumped out at me as much as that one did.
Yeah. Quake's so nice, and he's such an obscure character.
Yeah.
Croc certainly deserved a place purely because of popularity from the More Than Meets the Eye comics. Basically the same story with Breakaway. I mean, they did Croc really nicely. That looks really good on him. Personally, Breakaway is kind of meh. Because, I mean, the Chrome Dome, while nice for Chrome Dome, is kind of a meh mold.
Right, it's a one and done. It matched Chrome Dome, but that's where it should have stopped.
And it's also a car. It's a car form. It's a standard car former, pretty much. Roof on the back, arms from the doors, legs from the back. You know the drill. So you didn't need that. But also, what was really nice were the Beast formers out of this line because of the Decepticon Beast formers and Mindwipe. Oh, Mindwipe.
Yep. Yeah, they dug deep on the engineering on that one. I mean, it doesn't work 100% perfectly, but I appreciate the thought that went into it.
Absolutely. Oh, even the Autobot jump starters, Topspin and Twin Twist made it into this toy line, and they were just retools of each other of fairly drastically different vehicles, and they made it in here.
Topspin's one of my favorites. Twin Twist, sadly, I never saw in stores. I'd have picked them up if I'd have seen them. Never saw them.
Wave 5 just non-existent. I mean,
went missing.
Yeah. Wave 6, surprisingly, hung around a lot more than I expected from what I've been hearing.
I never saw Sludge Slinger in store. I picked up Misfire at TFCon, and I picked up Sludge Slinger on Amazon at retail price, but I never saw either one in stores.
Okay, I know they didn't get to all the stores, but I think in the stores where they did get to, they did kind of hold onto the shelves a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, some people would say that at certain stores, certainly they may have been more shelf warmery than others. Certainly not a shelf warmer. But from what I heard some reports, people thinking like, oh, wow, that they kind of stayed there for a bit.
And that's kind of funny, too, that you say that, because I remember in especially Wave 3, when Trigger Happy debuted, that he was a shelf warmer, peg warmer for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think I was listening to Vangelis when it came out, thinking like someone was playing a joke on us. Like, why are people leaving the best one of the series so far just sit? Everybody keeps grabbing all these hot rods and everything, but the best one out of all of them is still sitting there like in droves on the shelves, and he was fairly easy to find at the time.
Like, I would have bet Breakaway would have been the one to shelf warm out of the wave because he's the only Ritaco, and like,
right.
Trigger Happy is wonderful.
Yep.
Twinferno is amazing. Hot Rod's pretty good. I can understand like there being some issues with him, but I find Hot Rod to be quite nice.
I dig Hot Rod's alt mode, and the robot mode is okay.
Yeah.
But his alt mode definitely fits the bill. I do like that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely Hot Rod. Those shoulders are a little much, and especially and honestly, I'm not mad about the shoulders. It's more so that they get in the way of the spoiler.
Spoiler, right? If only the spoiler like collapsed down for car mode and then extended out for robot mode, so it can show a little bit more. But you know, whatever. It still looks pretty good.
Yes. But definitely that was very nice. If we're actually going through size classes, basically, let's jump back to the Legends class.
Yeah.
First two waves.
What was your stand?
Sorry.
I was just saying, what was your standout? You asked me before, so I'll ask you, what was your standout Legends figure?
Okay. That's a very good question. Sea Spray was really nice. Rewind, I think, out of the first two waves, Rewind was definitely the best, I think.
Okay.
Especially for the character, it was Rewind. I will, however, comment that I am surprised I did this, especially since how much I love Soundwave and all of his cassette minions. But I completely skipped Wave 2, and that consisted of Laserbeak, Ravage, and Rumble.
Right.
Purely because, I mean, Laserbeak's cool enough. Like, his toy, I have the Buzzsaw mold that was from Combiner Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically a
crossover piece.
Yeah, just to get ready for Titan's Return. But I did not like Laserbeak so much because there was not enough red on him, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand he's a mostly black figure, but he's still supposed to be...
He should have pops, accents of red on him, yeah.
Yeah, like I think the most of the red was like on his wings that were inside the cassette. I mean the smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, a nice attempt of them trying to do a smartphone instead of a cassette as a way to update it. I think they might have been a bit too bulky to effectively do them. Because especially for the likes of like Ravage.
Yeah.
That Ravage mold is hot garbage.
Yeah, I think this is an example of them trying to do maybe a little too much. For one mode, they just stick with Ravage is hard enough to do. He's kind of Ravage is always with the legs and a head and all. It has to be kind of a puzzle, and I think it was just too much. They tried to do too much. Yeah,
especially since for all of the cassette formers, they tried to give them a third mode as well. And it worked for Rewind. They did it well for the Rewind mold. The Laserbeak mold, the bird mode and the cassette mode, the smartphone mode, I keep saying cassette. The smartphone mode were nice. The other mode is like, what is that supposed to be? But like, it rolls. It does what it needs to do. It holds a Titan Master. It's fine. Ravage was just... Why'd you try to make it a jet?
Right. It's just that, then you get those two like fins sticking up off his hindquarters. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look the part. I mean, I think they could have done better. I think they have done better.
Yeah.
But even like I said, that's kind of a rare misstep, I think, in this what is mostly positive.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. And Rumble is based off the Rewind mold, which is a good mold. I think it could have been a little more different to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know what your stance on it is, but I'm a Rumble is blue, Frenzy is red kind of guy.
Yeah, I am too. I don't really get into it as much, but in my brain and my headcanon, yes, Rumble's blue.
Yeah, which also makes me surprised about the layout of that wave in particular, because it's all black and red.
That's true.
Literally everything on the shelf, if it was all on the shelf at once for Wave 2, was all black and red figures. And usually I think they want to like have different colors going on to like make the shelf pop more. So I'm surprised that they went with the red and black Rumble instead of the blue one.
Yeah, that's true.
But besides that, I'd say that the Legends class was pretty solid.
Yep, I my wheelie. I know some folks had trouble with wheelie pegging together, and mine wasn't 100%, but it did the job. And something has to be said for the fact that it was a good enough figure to get me excited about wheelie. So
yes,
that certainly added a little something to it. Like I said, mine held together fairly well, so I wasn't mad at it. And it held. I could set it down. It held in car mode. I was happy.
Yes.
Considering some of the problems that people had with it.
Yeah. It would definitely hold in car mode. If like I picked it up and put the lightest amount of pressure on it, that thing would just pop.
Right.
But I mean, you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to kind of just room it.
Sure.
Yeah. And that would hold together by itself. But
see, Wave 3 had Bumblebee, Null, and Kickback. Kickback kind of is what he is. I kind of bowed out of the Insecticons. They're not my favorite, but I did like the mold look of it. I didn't actually mess with it though.
The only thing that bothers me is why do all the Insecticons have different shades of purple?
Right. I think they have different shades of yellow too.
Yes.
There's a light and a darker.
Especially for Kickback, because his chest is clear plastic because it accommodates a Titan Master.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will say is smart considering the origins of Kickback.
Right.
That they were originally piloted vehicle things.
But then you don't have that with some of the other ones.
The Scrapnel or Bombshell. Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
So, folks, I'm sure there's some folks that would bother on the shelf. And there's no fixing that anytime soon,
Yeah, unless Takara decides to come out with like a 3-pack that matches all of their colors and whatnot.
Let me see what else. I picked up Null. He was actually kind of a pain for me to find, but I did eventually find him. And I got to tell you, man, I really like him. I mean, he's kind of dumpy looking in robot mode, but he's not. That's the robot. His identity isn't robot mode though. It's the
Sharkticon mode.
Sharkticon,
yeah, and he was very nice. I'm actually a little surprised I never actually troop built him. But granted, for me, troop building would be just getting 3.
Right, but I mean, still, that you're right, and that would look good though them together.
Yeah.
We talked about Braun. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, his Time Master seating, though, was pretty funny with it being in the mouth, I will say.
Yep.
Yeah. And
they had to work at it somehow, so they figured it out, I guess.
Yeah. And Bumblebee was there, and he's nice.
Another Bumblebee. I bowed out on that one, too. I put my foot down on another Bumblebee. I just wasn't going to do it. I
mean, I've had... Well, not the classics Bumblebee, but they had a new Bumblebee for the Reveal the Shield toy line in 2010. Because I missed out the classics Bumblebee because I wasn't really into collecting it at that point. So I've had that as like my Bumblebee for my classic shelf. But I'm definitely selling that for this Bumblebee because it's just at least more of the right size for me.
Yep. Yeah. See, I've got the classics Bumblebee from back in the day, so that's kind of... He's stored away somewhere, but that kind of did it for me,
No, yeah, completely understandable. That was a nice mold.
Yeah.
But Wave 4, we have Braun and Roadburn.
Mm-hmm. We touched on Braun. Kind of barrel-chested, but that's, we know why. Kind of long.
And Roadburn, mainly notable for being a retool of Bumblebee. Having a head of another character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That has yet to materialize, which I thought would have been obvious.
And if I'm remembering correctly, didn't his instructions list the wrong name?
Yeah, well, he is supposed to be Chase.
Chase, right.
Yeah, he's supposed to be Chase, and his instructions had the name Autobot Chase on it, but they gave him the name Roadburn, and as best everyone can figure, it's that they didn't want to cause confusion with the Rescue Bots character Chase.
Gotcha.
Who is a very distinct character.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last wave was Sea Spray, which I mentioned. I pretty like. It is one definite thing I do want to bring up right now, since I'm thinking about it, is a lot of this toy line is a lot of G1 with articulation.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Some people, I think this is starting to wear on some people, and people want to see a little something different. Because I've been starting to hear mumblings about, can we get something else besides the G1 toy with modern day articulation? But I think,
man, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, And definitely certain people are. I do hope for a change after Power of the Primes, but like especially with Titan's Return, with how obscure some of these characters are, I don't know what else you would have done with them besides G1 with articulation.
Right. No other basis for representation on them, so you kind of got to go with what you know.
Yeah, and also they were very good. A lot of them were very good representations.
I guess my answer to that would be, and you like what you like. I'm not going to try to convince anybody otherwise. But as for these being G1 with articulation, like I dig that, because if you don't want that, like you had animated, you had Prime, you got the movie figures.
Yes.
You got options. So I'm not,
yeah,
a little something for everybody.
Yeah. Though I'm not opposed to seeing modern updates of the original G1 characters. I do love a lot of characters designs from the IDW comics that are a lot more modernly updated.
Yep, and you have to go to some of the old generations dipped in those, and then you'll have to go third party if you want to get some.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
That is.
I also want to hit on Cosmos. I never picked up the Generations Cosmos, so I was stoked when it was the exact same one that came back out. So he really didn't fit with the line, that he didn't incorporate any kind of playability with the Titan Masters, but I was fine with that because I never got him the first time. So
that's about how I felt with Shrapnel for Power of the Primes.
Right.
Though that one bothers me so much more because like Cosmos was wave 5 filler.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, it's the last wave of the line. They needed something, so they just took an old mold they have and threw it out there. And then Scrapnel, it's the first wave, and it's the only figure that does not interact. I don't know why that infuriates me so much. Instead of like, say, a Kickback Ritaco or something, or the missing Roadburn recolor that should get, considering his head design, or one of a million other Bumblebee Ritacos.
Right, or at least, or G2 color scheme at least, something like that.
Precisely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Legends class overall was as strong, but there were a lot of strong components of the Legends class.
I would say, if you're going strictly by price point, I think Legends class gets you your most bang for your buck, and that might be controversial to some, but that just, for me, when I'm buying them, like I feel like Legends, you're kind of getting, unless you get others on sale or whatever, which is usually what I try to do. But at full price, I was happy with paying full price for a Legends class.
Okay.
Whereas with deluxe classes, like 15 or 16 or wherever you happen to go, or if you're Toys R Us, 18.
Yeah.
Some of the deluxe classes, you felt a certain kind of way about paying that much. Like I said, most of mine I got on discount, so I wasn't too sad about that. But but pound for pound, the Legends, I think, were worth the money.
Okay. I definitely feel that more with Power of the Primes. I still think Wave 2 is leaving a salty taste in my mouth for the Titans Return Legends, but definitely look, in general, the Legends class, I can agree with that.
Sure.
If not that, the deluxe classes, certainly, because I mean they're also right there. But I can understand, since how many of them there are, that there can be some wear and tear. There's certainly a bit of wear and tear on your wallet, since that's also like basically like the main class. Since there's like 4 figures out every wave of those, and that's $15 times 60. That's $60 per wave. Where Legends class were about 3 a wave. And $10 a pound, so that's like half, and you get a wave all done. If you're that kind of a completionist.
And I'll tell you too, on the deluxe class, you really see the swing in. I don't know how to say it. Like on one figure, it has so much engineering. Like we'll go back. I'll go back a few times to them, where you go to your top spins. Your Wolf Wire was good. Your Trigger Happies. They had so much engineering put into them, and it had so much extra to it. And then you saw the wild swing the other way in the deluxe class with your highbrows, for instance. Like highbrow will be my crowning example of one that was it suffered because I'm sure the money went to another one. Like that one, I was okay with it, but man, it just didn't have the love put in that some of these other ones did.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah.
You just look at the engineering in a highbrow compared to your engineering in your cup or your Twinferno, and it's just that's kind of where I feel like the price balanced out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fair. Yeah, I didn't ask you. What was your favorite out of the Legends class?
Oh, the Legends classes. I am going to go with Sea Spray.
Sea Spray.
Sea
Okay.
Spray. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing 2 for 2 on how our favorites. We never discussed what our favorites were for the deluxes so far. So,
okay.
What was your favorite on the deluxe?
Misfire will be my favorite for the deluxe.
Misfire?
Definitely, yeah.
I feel like I probably would go with that if I had a Misfire. I've yet to get one, so I'm going to go with Trigger Happy.
Right, and like I said, this one I got at the convention and paid a little over retail, which I don't like doing, but I figured I'd never see it again, and I haven't yet, so it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably have to do that at some point. Go on Amazon, or maybe check the forums and see if anyone's selling them for about retail.
Yeah, because you'll probably see a bunch of people that want to dump one toy line for the next when it comes out. So
yeah,
probably a good time for that.
Yeah, so I may have to start looking at that. But now that we're completely done with deluxe class, let's move on to the Voyager class. I will note for the audience that you did not have a whole lot of the Voyager class.
Correct. I only Wave 4's Broadside, the only one that I dabbled in, and let's just say I am glad that I got him for $10.
Oh, I agree with that one. I appreciate the figure exists.
Sure, absolutely.
Since we had Springer and Sandstorm come out during the Thrilling 30 line back in 2013, Broadside could have been better. And someone I don't remember who it was. But I saw someone talking on Twitter recently that they were playing around with the Broadside and they could tell that there was supposed to be a waist articulation that just didn't get budgeted in properly.
Right.
Because it looks like those legs are supposed to fold over the jet mode as opposed to stick out the back like they are. So as the wings face the right way.
And I think that's what's so infuriating is that you can see where some love was going into it from somebody, at some point, but.
Yeah,
some corners got cut.
Yeah, to an extent, that jet mode is still also fairly derpy, especially with the positioning of the wings. But right. I probably could have looked over that better if the jet mode was more solid.
I will say that there are some alternate configurations for it that make it look a lot better.
Yes, definitely. I do have one of those when I have him in jet mode, but I also have to flip around the wing pieces, but they're on.
Yeah, you physically pull them off and repeg them. Yeah,
but they're friction joints, so they're fine. Mm-hmm. Besides that, the only other figure in this way in the Voyagers that I personally had an issue with was a Galvatron. Mm-hmm. Mainly because the pop-up collar for him was a pop-up mask, and that was so rough. It's I know they're designed a year and a half in advance, but I think they made that and they were like, this is bad. We're not doing this for any of the other figures of the Voyagers because literally everyone else is a pop-up color and no other masks were seen. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't sit well on any face, including the one that comes with Galvatron.
Yeah, his face kind of just disappears back into it, does it not?
Yeah, it does, pretty much. Honestly, half the time, if it wasn't for the fact Galvatron's face was so recognizable, I'd be content just leaving the face masks down. But I'm probably going to get a 3D printed upgrade kit at some point. Honestly, I'm surprised I haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah. And they have a kit that also moves the cannon around, right?
Because that's also just very awkward placement that it's on the top of the arm instead of the side. Especially with his shoulder panel, his shoulder kibble going on there, it does really get in the way, and I think putting it on the side would also alleviate that a lot. But yeah, that was definitely a thing. So I did get mine on a bit of a sale. I think I got maybe 10 or 15% off. Not a whole lot, but something to make it better. So I'm probably definitely at some point getting some 3D printed stuff to fix him. But besides that, pretty much everything else I was fairly content with. We got all 3 Decepticon triple changers in the Voyagers.
Yeah, how about that? Some of our Phase 6ers there.
Yeah, Phase 6ers we got into leader class. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the Phase 6ers are even more shocking
Oh
But
yeah. Oh, sorry about that. I scrolled down to the wrong size class. I got you. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to leaders. But the
Yeah.
Voyagers, Astrotrain, Octone,
Noctone, right?
Blitzwing, and honestly, Octone, Blitzwing, wonderful little figures. Octone probably could have done a little bit. Not really. It's just the wings are a little awkward to get into alternate configurations sometimes, just because you have to fold around like 3,000 times to get into the right position. That's a minor thing just to accommodate it being in vehicle mode. Blitzwing's really cool. Also, especially because you can totally transform them to have like the G1 feet, where it's just the jet thrusters and the tail fins.
Gotcha.
And it totally stands, and it's totally wonderful.
Hmm.
I never
You
had the
think that was
G1 toy, but
intentional?
like I'm just content that's a thing.
You think that was intentional?
Yeah, to an extent. Like, admittedly, Blitzwing is definitely a G1 with articulation, so having that end up that way is not like a stretch.
Hmm.
But like, and admittedly, it is a little less balanced because the tail fins do have a freer movement than the ankles than the regular feet would. But that's a nice, at least, possibility whether it was intentional or not. Also, surprisingly, that mold makes a very nice Megatron.
But that actually brings up a good point though, because this is where Hasbro's, I guess you'd say Hasbro's game of releasing a remold first starts to come into play.
That's very true. That's a very good point to bring up. That
Yeah.
every single one of those Voyagers got released in a different color scheme as someone else.
Yep.
Sentinel Prime for Astrotrain, Megatron for Blitzwing, and Optimus Prime for Octone.
So and yeah, especially like playing with my buddy's Sentinel Prime. I'm like, everyone and their brother knows this is going to be an Astro Train at some point. Even if you didn't know the release schedule, just looking at it, you're thinking, how is? But there you are holding it, So you obviously bought, you were excited about the new mold, so you bought the remold first, even if you didn't have any interest in that character.
Yeah.
They got you, and then once the proper one came out, quote unquote proper one, then you jumped on that too. So they were able to double dip pretty successfully, I think, with that. But it didn't go unnoticed.
No, certainly. I do think the Megatron and the Optimus Primes were certainly better.
Yeah.
Megatron is honestly my classics Megatron for my classics shelf.
Okay.
The tank mode is really nice. The robot mode is really nice. There's enough on the Blitzwing mold already to make it a very nice Megatron.
Mm-hmm.
The Optimus Prime, I don't actually have the Optimus Prime. I have the Laser Prime from one of the 2 box sets.
Okay.
And that works very nicely to be, I think maybe more the Laser Prime one, because that's actually the G2 colors of the toy it's supposed to be referencing. That Optimus Prime is supposed to be referencing.
Mm-hmm.
The Astro Chain one was a little weirder because that was certainly out of the 3 triple changers, that was the one that was not a G1 with articulation guy by a long shot.
Right.
And the train mode's just a little wonky just because of like all of the wings being in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
To me. But Alpha Trion was cool though. I'll say Alpha Trion was cool. It's weird that he was a lion in a spaceship, but you know what? It was nice. And even technically Alpha Trion was popular, a big notable character like that got released before the actual triple changer was supposed to come out.
Right.
But on him, that was a heavy amount of retooling. That the first one was just better. But I think if you had to say, I know you don't have a lot of Voyagers, but if you had to pick a favorite Voyager out of this group,
I'll say again, I didn't handle most of them, but I will say that I did. Octone or Blitzwing probably are the ones that I held in my hand in the store longer than any other, thinking, do I really need to buy this? Probably Blitzwing would have been the one I sat there and stared at the longest, thinking, do I need this? And ultimately I didn't get it, but I would have probably gotten the Blitzwing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say Blitzwing is for me, though the Megatron, again, also comes close just because it's my classics Megatron, because I like the Optimus and Megatron at a Voyager scale, and there hasn't been a good Voyager Megatron since the 06 Nerf gun Megatron.
Right, I have that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, again, missed that one because that was very early in my Transformers career.
Right, and I have the proper purple and orange, not the actual good colored one, but the main release.
Yeah. But let us move on to the leader class now.
Okay.
And bring up what you had brought up. The Phase 6ers all got released as leader class figures, and people have seen them all on the shelves at the same time. And if you told someone that was going to happen 5 years ago, they wouldn't believe you.
Yep. I saw every one of I will say I saw every one of these on the shelf at some point. Some more than others, but Six Shot and Overlord I only ever saw once, but the rest I saw many a times.
I saw Six Shot and Sky Shadow frequently enough. Never saw Overlord. Though did get him on one of the Amazon flash sales back in December.
Yep.
Got him for like $35, and I mean I still would have paid full price for it, but that's really nice for $35.
Yep.
Besides those three, there was Blaster, Soundwave, and Power Master Optimus Prime. Mm-hmm. The Optimus Prime being a heavy retool of the Combiner Wars Ultra Magnus. I never picked that one up because I wasn't really into that. And also, I thought I was going to get the other box set that had the Ginrai, the Japanese retooling of it.
Yeah.
But I completely missed that box set, and I regret it. I was like only online for like one day at Big Bag Toy Store, and they were all gone.
Yep, blink and you missed it.
Yeah, and we do have to get talking about those at some point, but we got to finish the leaders and titans.
I don't have a whole lot to say about the leaders besides that, like you said, the base modes were okay, and I kind of dig that. Was it Blaster's base mode? Almost like almost had the look of a nightclub to it.
Yeah, it did. I felt like if you you were able to move one of the sides up to a bit to have like an extra platform and like just put a little DJ turntable, mm-hmm. You could have like the little Time Masters having raves and whatnot. I mean, it's the same thing for Soundwave because Soundwave's the same mold, but I think it just works better with Blaster because of the colors and his character.
His character, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Though Six Shot was also very nice. Well, Six Shot and Overlord were a nice surprise. With Six Shot being a six changer something we haven't seen in years.
Yep.
And Overlord being friggin' Overlord, mm-hmm. because we have gotten Sky Shadow toys in the past.
What was the last release? I don't remember.
We got one in Generations actually. It was a deluxe sized figure retooled from Thunderwing because that's the mold. So like they're small, but it exists.
Name was used, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's supposed to be the exact same character. It's the same.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I see it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Same toy referencing. But that one's not as exciting, though it's a lot nicer as a leader class than the deluxe. But Overlord being a Japanese exclusive character that was only got popular in the States because of the last Stand of the Wreckers comic. Yep. Pretty much, right?
Yep. The last Stand of the I have the trade paperback for that sitting right there.
Yeah. And then that getting a toy. Hasbro it's nice that Hasbro recognizes IDW is really popular. To an extent.
Sure. I mean, even like, I don't think we mentioned it back, even all the way back in the Legends class, where Rewind had his recorder on the side of his head as an homage to the comic book character.
Yes. Chrome Dome certainly not as much of a reference to the comic character because that is a very exotic design.
Yeah, and his comic is so different from any other interpretation.
Yeah, but but certainly the nice IDW-ish touches, like Perceptor with his shoulders and the sniper rifle bit.
Yep.
Very nice.
Which is why I was surprised they didn't give him the
eye patch. Yeah.
Eye patch, yeah.
Yeah, really. But also, this is also another case, back to leader class. Sky Shadow, though, admittedly, is another case of releasing the retool before the main figure it's supposed to be. But I don't mind. It was nice getting.
No, it was a heavy retool. I mean, you knew, but I mean, at least it was radically different. If you held both jets, of the alt modes, you wouldn't. I don't think anybody would be able to tell right off the bat that they were the same, basic. skeleton.
Honestly, besides like joints and stuff, I feel like the entire jet mode sections are just entirely new tooling.
Mm-hmm.
Like the legs are obviously the exact same. Like I think the fists and like the elbow joints sections, I think they're the only parts that are the same of the torsos, which is very nice. But if you had to pick a favorite,
Overlord, definitely Overlord.
Overlord?
He's one that I kind of regret not picking up on that. I saw that same Amazon sale. I wish I'd have gotten it, and I messed with him at the meetup those months ago. I do wish I had him. I do have the MMC's Carnifex though, the third party, so that kind of scratches the itch. But I definitely would have picked up the official.
Yeah, Overlord is very nice. Admittedly, in terms of toy, I think I've enjoyed Sky Shadow more, surprisingly. In terms of just the base toy itself, purely because for whatever reason, Overlord is like both of them are supposed to be able to connect the jet and the tank parts. It works on Sky Shadow. It doesn't work on Overlord for whatever reason.
Right. Kind of odd, but
however, this is so stupid. But I love Overlord so much because I got there was someone on my Twitter that was posting about making custom scraplets from Prime. So I saw them I saw when I was going to TFCon. I was like, ooh, I'd like to get one of those because those look really cool. I didn't, and then she had another set she was making, so I got one of them and figured I'd review it for the channel. But it also came with a cowboy hat to fit on the scraplet head, and it's the perfect size for these leader class figures. And have you seen the Titans Return cartoon at all?
No, I've been waiting for them to. I'll watch them all in one bulk when it comes out.
So one thing I'll spoil is
that's fine. Go ahead.
Is Overlord sounds a bit like either Colonel Sanders or Foghorn Leghorn.
I don't know if does that mesh well. Does that work? Does that work in real life?
Not really.
Okay.
But he does have that kind of like. Not like really southern drawl, but a little bit of a southern drawl to him, which really is off-putting. But there's one episode where he says like "howdy."
Now that kind of makes me want to watch it though.
Yeah. No, yeah. I encourage you to watch it just to see how you react to it. But because I got that cowboy hat and it fits on a leader class figure, and he has that southern drawl in the cartoon, I'm just like, okay, this is just now how I think of Overlord. Now he's kind of a space cowboy-esque.
And it was, I think did you get from Rachel Cook, the scraplet?
Yes.
At TFCon? Yeah, I was trying to look her name up because I wanted to give her a shout out because I actually I was in the dealer room line with her and she was really cool and I wanted to look up and make sure I got her name right. So. Yes,
yeah, it was Rachel Cook at Arts Rachel, I believe.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure she's also got an Etsy account for other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, yeah, that was, yeah. It was very nice. Yeah. Very nice figures and very nice custom from her. But we got to move on. Let's move on to the Titan class figures. The two Titan class figures, Fortress Maximus and Triptychon.
These are all you, man. These were out of my price range.
Yeah, no, yeah. I will definitely say, if any of you listening to this have watched my reviews, you do basically know what I think of them. But I'll say it here briefly in case you haven't seen those and don't want to watch two 40-minute reviews to see my opinions. While the Fortress Maximus figure has lights and sounds going on with it in the Cerebros figure, and that's a very nice representation. It's also a heavy retool of Metroplex, so it's not 110% G1 accurate. It's like 75% accurate, I'd say.
Kind of close enough, or
yeah, kind of close enough. I think the main thing is like it's supposed to have the legs are supposed to form towers, but they're not capable of doing that, so they just kind of lay out flat.
Okay.
And also the city mode's a little off. Again, I've never held the toy, but from what I've seen from pictures, it doesn't seem that accurate. And also the biggest fault with it to me is that it doesn't have any solid ankle articulation to get into really good action poses.
Right, it's kind of just always towering over.
Yeah, it's just towering over and just standing there like a statue.
That's the only Titan class figure I've ever purchased. I'm showing him that my Armada Unicron. That's the only time I ever went into Titan class, and even then it wasn't quite called that, and I don't think it's quite as big.
It was Supreme,
Yeah.
And then back at the day, it was only $50.
And that's how much I paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I need a Unicron for my shelf. I got my Primus, but I don't have a Unicron.
Yeah, I saw the Primus. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Fortress Maximus is really let down by not having ankle articulation. Trypticon, on top of being a giant robot dinosaur, who, while admittedly a couple inches shorter than Fortress Maximus and his counterpart Metroplex, still definitely has the mass to make up for it. And he makes a really good figure because of his ankle articulation. And such great dynamic posing. And I definitely say Trypticon is the better of the two.
And they had fun with him too, with the stomach and the eating of the Titan Masters. It seemed like someone they had a good idea, and Hasbro and Takara let him run with it. Hey, we got a big dinosaur with a giant mouth. He's got to eat these guys. Yeah. And someone signed off on it, so that was cool.
Also, definitely a figure deserving of a G1 with articulation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's all for the mainline stuff. There's a few exclusive things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk about them all as well. We do have a couple of groups. There were a couple of convention exclusives. One was at 2016 with Titan Force. That was really bright, translucent orange Sentinel Prime with RID Windblade painted as Fort Max, and then the first instance of a Brainstorm release.
Yes.
Nothing too special about that. I don't think either of us got that.
Nope. I'm looking at the Brainstorm is all kinds of weird colors, though.
I think he's more toy accurate, though.
Okay.
Whereas the one that was released at Walgreens was more cartoon accurate, I believe.
Gotcha.
And certainly more IDW accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also convention exclusive Fort Max. That the main thing it added was the giant master sword from the Japanese version of the Headmasters.
Yep.
And then in 2017 there was the primitive skateboarding Optimus Prime with Shredicus Maximus. God, that name. And with also including a railgun kind of a weapon that folded out into a skate park ramp with a little skateboard for the Titan Master. That's
with just an awesome color scheme. That's almost like Tron. It made me think of Tron when I first saw it.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can agree with that. But that looks so nice, and especially for only $5 more with those kinds of new molded accessories that are not existing anywhere else. That was a pretty fair price. I didn't pick it up, unfortunately. Though that would be nice. That would be nice to own. So again, just bringing that up. And then Walgreens, we already mentioned that there was the Brainstorm.
Yep, which I picked up I got that off the website, and definitely worth it. I think it was a few bucks more, but he's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I think their prices for the deluxes were like $18.
Mm-hmm.
But especially for an exclusive like that is completely reasonable. And then they also this year had the Wingspan and Cloudraker 2-pack to pair with their clone brothers from the Big Bad Toy Store and the Toys R Us box sets.
Which we were talking I think some of this is kind of a weird decision, you know?
Yeah. So just a little bit of background on those. So first, we already knew that there were going to be box sets. I think Toy Fair showed us that there were going to be these two box sets exactly, and they were the Chaos on Velocitron one that came out at Toys R Us, and then the Siege on Cybertron that came out at Big Bad Toy Store. They all came with Titan Master with diecast metal, new mold Legends class figure, because they also mentioned like they didn't really fit into the Legends class price point, a deluxe, a Voyager, and a Leader class figure. All light retools at the very most of already existing molds. But regardless, that was what these box sets contained. The thing was also with this entire toy line, with if you cared for the extra, like the packing cards or the bio information, they for the longest time it's always been 8 stats, and they reduced it down to 4 stats. But the main reason I'm bringing this up is because on both the boxes, the Chaos on Velocitron, Season Cybertron, they're also marked as one of those for tech spec factors or whatever. I think the Chaos on Velocitron was the speed set, and the Siege on Cybertron one was the strength set.
Okay, yeah.
And the other two being intelligence and firepower. And along with that number of 4, as well as the 4 clones, everyone believed there would be 4 box sets. However, they never materialized, which makes people question. Though I did hear a very good explanation for it. And apparently the logic behind it seems to be it was based on the poor sales of a lot of the Combiner Wars box sets.
Some of which I can still find in the stores.
Yeah, precisely. I can still get them to this day. I can get certain box sets online. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing some people manage to pick up the G2 Bruticus's for $40.
I got the G2 Stunticon set for $35 on eBay, or from Hasbro's official store. So I was one of them.
Yeah, wow.
Yep, I never would have bought that set otherwise. And honestly, like, not to go into it, but I'm glad I didn't pay full price for that set.
Yeah. But from a marketing standpoint, whether from a Hasbro standpoint or from like stores wanting to pick up these exclusive box sets, there's probably some tension about like, do we want to sell this? And they are probably already far enough along in production for these 2 box sets, so they had to continue on with them and then just scrap the rest. Though still giving us the new stuff with the Wingspan Cloudraker 2-pack, as well as another exclusive we should definitely talk about of the Hasbro Toy Shop exclusives. Let's say that for simplicity's sake. Of the RC and Grotesque. That came with 2 die-cast Time Masters, which seemingly would have come from those box sets.
And and I think that the RC, I guess some folks had expected, because I remember there was some buzz around it, and it wasn't a big surprise when it came out.
Yeah,
but I know that the Grotesque was like out of left field.
Yeah, there was some leaked artwork of RC.
Yeah.
And I think we also had like package information because somehow we already knew about line ad being a thing. But literally, Grotesque, New York Comic Con happened. There was a panel. They mentioned, oh yeah, we're going to have another one. It's going to be Grotesque and Fengul and Scorponok. And actually, it's currently available on the Hasbro Toy Shop.
Yeah, boom, and there it was.
And the people who were lucky enough to actually know about it, since that was, from my understanding, a very hard panel to view, got lucky and got one within the 3 hours before it sold out.
Yep.
I happened to be out doing some errands when that news dropped, and then I got back to my apartment like 1:30. And I was like, wait, what? Okay, now get online before they all sell out.
Yep.
And
I got a Twitter notification when it went online for sale, so I actually had my finger on the button to buy it. But again, I'm cheap and frugal, and I didn't do it.
Yeah, but they also have been showing up at Toys R Us, online and in store, if you didn't get those Target sets. But like, those are very nice, I will say. Because I'm pretty much done with talking about the box sets, because I only got the Chaos and Velocitron one. Because it also seems, along with not making as many box sets as people expected, they didn't stock them as much.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. Did you ever see it in store, or did you get it online?
No, mine I actually did find in store.
Okay. I never saw them physically.
I heard, like, literally, I was on the forums. I happened to hear there was one in Pennsylvania. But like on the other side of Pennsylvania. It was like a couple of days before my birthday. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And I did. And I went. There was one on the shelf, and I picked it up. And I'm like, I was so friggin' lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, that also had a Nautica in it. I'm like, Nautica was a toy.
Right, which is one of the ones I guess everybody was kind of clamoring for.
Yeah.
And I guess not because it's a great figure, but because they're not planning any Nautica anytime soon, and her star is kind of on the rise because of the comic books as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was a comic original character, and like, she's so great.
Right.
I will say she's a great character. And then at least the toy tries to attempt to make it look as much like it while doing as minimal as possible.
Right, and still staying within the bounds of the mold.
Yeah. I mean, there was also quick switch in that set, which is the Autobot six changer counterpart, which that also got a release. That's also surprising.
So what else are you going to do with Six Shot though? If you're going to get another use out of him,
according to Japan, make a great shot out of it.
Okay.
Along with the freaking Grand Max that they're doing. Oh, I did forget about those because those are really special exclusives. But whatever, because we're never getting those.
And I think the other talking point was Metal Hawk. Same deal there, where his comic book character is sort of given his name recognition.
Yeah.
And then he pops up in the and it's still, again, it's trigger happy. It's a great figure, in any color. So
yes.
Good to own.
Also, I think because there was the Japanese retooling of the Power Master Prime mold as Ginrai in that set. And especially since the sets were canceled, that makes me more upset because I figured we would get another box set and we would get the God Bomber part to it. That never materialized, so that's unfortunate. Well, at least for me, stateside, I've never bought anything straight from Japan. I've wanted to a few times, but I just never have yet.
Right.
I'm sure it'll happen one of these days. Somehow. Probably with whatever new exclusive Power of the Primes box set happens. But yeah, the Hasbro Toy Shop stuff was also really, really nice. Especially with how...
You just got to catch them.
Yeah. With how they retooled the figures that they originally were into those new characters. That was really nice and really surprising. Especially for Grotesque, because I don't think anyone expected them to actually round out the monster bots.
No, but I guess that caused some contention though with the other monster bots being
with Double Cross is the deluxe, and then it's just Repugnus is the Legends.
Not even Legends.
Time Master.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I can understand that, but I have seen some people customize that same mold into Repugnus, so I know it's probably not a big market, but I kind of wish a third-party company would give like full bodies to the Time Master dudes. But I'm certain that's never happening at this point. Since we've been doing for the other size classes, what would you say your favorite exclusive is?
I would say the only one I have in hand is Brainstorm, and I really like him. So in hand, I'll go with him. But of the one, I wish I had picked up the Grotesque of all of them. Even looking at the box sets, all of them look cool. And Nautica would have maybe caught my eye, but I didn't feel like it was there wasn't enough different for me to have to try to track down that whole thing, the whole set. And then in the big bag, we didn't even mention Tidal Wave, the remold.
Yes.
And again, Tidal Wave's a character. You're using that same mold we were talking about before for
Broadside.
What's his name? Broadside. And the color scheme's cool on it, but the original Tidal Wave that came out with Armada is one of my favorite figures, so I had no reason to replace that.
Yeah, that looks so cool. Also, I hear that thing's massive. Isn't it larger than like modern day leader class figures, and it was just an ultra class figure?
I think maybe most leader classes are probably a little beefier than it is, but it's definitely taller.
Yeah. Tidal Wave wasn't that set. Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
But yeah, I'd have to go. Grotesque was definitely my favorite looking of the whole set, and having handled the its mold mate, I could see me liking that one the best.
Especially since you can just flat out ignore the jet mode since he was only a battleship in the original.
Right.
Yeah, so you don't even have to acknowledge that horrible crap. But for me, what would be my favorite? I mean, Nautica's certainly nice, but certainly not my favorite. Well, I did have my top 10 list of my favorite Transformers I got that year, and RC was on the top of that list.
Yeah.
So I would have to say RC, though Grotesque is very nice about what they did to retool it. But it's just very nice to get an RC like that. Very nice to get an RC. I also don't have missed out on the Generations RC since that was a late wave thing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Also, I do find that one a little weird purely because it has like a human stomach molded onto it. That just disturbs me a little bit. Like if they didn't have that, that'd be perfect.
That definitely harkens back to RC's original design. It was very much, human Princess Leia kind of mashup.
Yeah, but they did need to throw in a belly button on that. Yeah. But that's all the figures we've talked about, and we have gone over a lot of the gimmicks and the whatnot. And I think we've touched on unless there's anything you've missed that you really like about anything of Titan's Return that we haven't touched upon yet.
No, I've pretty much brought up everything I could think of as I thought of it. So
yeah.
I'm just trying to look around and see if I have any other figures sitting around that I think to talk about. But I think we've touched about everything. I mean, it was a solid line, and hopefully it was popular and money making for them. And you have the normal problems that you're going to have with Hasbro. I mean, folks that don't like Hasbro aren't going to like these because they're still hollow. Some tend to go towards the cheaper plastic, and some of them do lack paint. So it's the same argument. These aren't going to change anybody's mind.
No.
But if you could stomach these kind of things at price point, then it kind of gets to me when people compare these to like third party offerings. I'm like, well, no kidding, the $15 toy is not as good as the $80 toy, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, being able to walk into a Target or something and being able to grab one of these guys, especially these more obscure characters that they're now offering, that's exciting to me. So that's why I keep going back to these mainline figures.
Yes. But before we finish up here, I do have a couple other questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we also touched on like the weak points of this toy line going through all the different waves as well. So I don't think there's anything else we've missed unless you've got something.
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, anyway, unless you have something to add.
No, I think I'm good. But I do have 2 questions for you about the toy line. If you were in charge of it, what, if anything, would you have done differently about the toy line?
I would have found some way to incorporate the Titan Master heads onto bodies that weren't released as a separate character. Maybe have like some kind of clone body, like a stock Autobot or Decepticon clone body, almost harkening back to the background characters in G1, like the generic Seekers and stuff.
Ooh.
I would have had generic bodies released without heads to pair these Titan Masters up with.
Ooh, so what?
This would have been your troop builder as well. So if you had like a generic Seeker body with no head, then you could use all these different figures, Titan Masters, and incorporate with them and have a full figure, including weapon and such, with the little Titan Master, tank or whatever the
transformable vehicle. Or non-transformable.
Dealer's choice. I would make them transformable. Maybe not as complicated. Have them a little more simplistic, but I'd still have them transformable, I think.
Okay. But they'd probably be about a deluxe-ish size, since that seems like the ideal head size.
Have generic jet, and then Autobot have generic car or tank or something like that.
Yeah.
Just and change colors, tweak the mold here and there, but just definitely a troop building kind of thing. And that would have caused me at least to buy a few of those and a few more Titan Masters to pair with.
That's really
that was my
cool.
big thing, is like with the Titan Masters, you had a bunch. It was cool to swap heads with the other figures, but at the end of the day, you still just had a bunch of severed heads.
Yeah, very true. But that's a really neat idea. That's wow. I didn't even think of anything good for this question, admittedly. I was curious if you had any ideas, but that is a really nice option. That honestly probably blows anything else I could have suggested out of the water, because it probably would have done something to do with making the Time Masters a little bit more interactable to some extent. Mm-hmm. The only other thing I could think of, and I'm only thinking of this because I've played with I've got most of the Power of the Primes that are Wave 1 Power of the Primes. The only ones I'm missing are the leaders. But literally every single figure that came out for that. I mean, admittedly, the Prime Masters are the new Time Masters. Right. But literally every single figure of that line, the Legends all can have them sit, obviously, except for Scrapnel. But every other size class, they don't normally interact with them. But every single one of them has Titan Master ports somewhere on their alternate mode bodies to allow them to stand on the alternate mode. And not every single one of the Legends or Voyagers, I believe, had them. Not every single one.
Hmm.
So I would have found a way to get them standing on all of them somehow.
And that you would think would be an easy ad to just have the pegs incorporated somewhere, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Maybe the only other thing I would have done is done something different with the guns that had the. Oh, here's the thing. How the prime armor pieces on the deluxes and voyagers have. Well, the deluxes have gap filler things. Give that to any weapon with a Time Master seed in it. So it doesn't have an obnoxiously large hole in it.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, that's about all I could say for like, if I was in charge of the line, is something I would have done different.
Mm-hmm.
Also given Fortress Maximus some friggin' ankle tilt.
Right.
And the second question, if there are any other characters you would have wanted to see come out of this toy line, what would they have been?
I can't, off the top of my head, nobody springs to mind. If we were in the wave now, I would have said Dinobots, but obviously that's covered. So
yeah,
I can't. I think they did a really good job with characters. I mean, I can't. They dug into the Japanese characters. Maybe a Star Saber.
I feel like that may come out during Power of the Primes.
Right.
Purely because they did bring the guy who designed the original Star Saber to make the Optimus Primal.
Okay.
So that...
And he was part of the fan vote as well.
Yeah, he was involved in the fan vote, and his gimmick just straight up works with the Prime gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
But as for
How
me...
about you?
I don't have any connection with these characters. I only know this because I just know about them. But do you know the Horrorcons?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were for anyone not knowing, they were Decepticon headmasters that were triple changers, and the Voyager class were all triple changers. So I don't know how they did not get headmaster triple changers made in a toy line with headmaster triple changers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I could have added.
Yep, that's true.
Admittedly, they are
wave at least.
Admittedly, they are weird because they're a jet and a beast. So that would have been really hard to retool or get another use out of it, though it was possible with the Alpha Trion. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that. And before we finish up, out of this entire toy line, what is your favorite character and what is your least favorite character?
Just not beholden to the ones I've bought, just of the whole thing.
Yes, it can certainly be ones you have bought, but if there's and I'm certain it's probably more likely to be something you bought. But what overall is your favorite and least favorite?
Yeah, now, when you say you mean character as in the character themselves, or are you talking about the whole shebang, like the engineering and
whole
the figure
shebang,
itself?
toy, character, all of that?
I'm going to say that my least favorite that I bought out of all of them is actually probably, I talked about him before, is probably Highbrow. I feel like they phoned that whole thing in.
Okay.
Definitely Highbrow. It's just you see on the figure where like some more steps, another piece or two would have helped if something would have collapsed or the propeller blades would have folded away or something. Just something to take it to that next step.
Yeah.
And my favorite figure from the whole thing, I think I said before, was Misfire, and it's definitely true.
Yeah. For me, let's exclude Trypticon. It would definitely be Trypticon, but certainly Trypticon. But if I couldn't pick Trypticon, it would be Trigger Happy.
Right. Yep.
For me, as my favorite. For my least favorite, Stripes. Autobot Stripes.
Yeah, because Trypticon was your number one in your top 10, was it not?
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
And it was only number...
I knew it was up there.
It was only number 2 because Primus was my number 1, and I recognized Trypticon as a better figure, but my nostalgia since I started out on Cybertron just overrid all of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yes, Stripes, that's just a horrible, horrible toy. It's so... How did I don't mind that they brought that character back because that's just such a weird, obscure character they managed to bring into a mainline toy line. That's cool. The toy itself is just garbage. Utter garbage. Like we were talking about with Ravage. It's the same toy. Utter garbage. I'm sorry. Those are some very few figures I actually have that strong opinions on, and God, if I get into them, I'm sorry about that. But we're done here, pretty much. Do you have any final thoughts you want to say about the Titans Return toy line?
Nope, I think we covered it pretty good.
I think so too, but I would overall say, however, it was a very successful toy line.
I agree, and it filled some holes in collections and made it fun to hunt in the toy aisle for a few months, if not years.
Until we got to like Wave 5 Deluxes, and they just never appeared, and then that didn't get too fun.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just more so distribution issues than really anything on Hasbro's side. Because Hasbro doesn't really handle the distribution. It's as much, from my understanding. It's mostly the individual stores that buy from them and then distribute them from there. From my how understanding it works. But overall, we say it's a very great toy line, a very good toy line.
Agreed.
And a very good mark on the Transformers, I would say. Not so much the cartoon, I don't think. But I know I'll be talking about that show in a couple of weeks. Not next week, since that's when it's supposed to be over, but probably end of this month or start of next month. I'll be talking about the cartoon. But that is all from us today. So thank you for watching. If you enjoy, before we get there, do you have any social media? Do you want people to follow you at?
They can follow me or laugh at me. My name is Matt Partsformer on Twitter. It's at Biohazard2M. So you can check me out there. I'm usually just retweeting crap, so it's nothing all that stellar.
Yeah. Just in case anyone is interested.
Sure.
But
and I'm Partsformer on the TFW forums as well.
Yeah, I'll leave a link to that in the description, just in case anyone's interested. But that is all from us tonight, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SoundJack426. Also, please consider donating on my Patreon page to help support the channel. All of the links will be in the description below. Thanks for tuning in. This is SoundJack and Matt signing off.